Hey everybody. Well, this is the end of the season. I'm putting the boat away for the winter. And that means I've run the full season now with this Victron BMV-712 on my trolling motor batteries. And my decision in the setup, because of the way this one configures, is to set it up so that it is monitoring one battery of the pair. What I have, I'll just do a reminder. I have a pair of 12 volt Battleborn batteries and a triple bank Promariner charger. So each battery gets charged individually, which is probably the best way to do it actually. The way the Victron 712 is set up is it doesn't have independent grounds, so if you can't measure the state of charge across both batteries without manually resetting the state of charge when you get them charged and so forth, because you can't monitor the batteries separately in this case. And that's based on the way the grounds are set up. And I can show you a picture. But in any case, my choice for the year was to pick one battery, monitor the state of charge of that battery, and then use the additional input that they give you, and use it to monitor the two batteries as a pair. So I can read the 24 volts or 25 volts or so on the pair, and I can read the single one. And I read the state of charge of the one battery, and as long as the two voltages are close, you can assume that the state of charge ought to be the same on the other battery. I mean, the way the chargers work, they balance. The way that you're discharging them, you're using the same amount of current out of each battery because they're in series. So that was my choice.
What I ended up with the Victron BMV-712 is I am only measuring state of charge of this battery. The shunt installed at one end at the negative terminal in the feed line back from the trolling motor. Again, you've got the triple bank charger, so charge loop 1 starts on the ground side, comes up around here, positive goes back, charges the battery, goes back to the shunt. So that's your charge loop on this battery. When you're drawing on it, of course, all the current comes back through the shunt. But the current is the same whether you have a 12 volt or a 24. Well, there's a power issue, but the current here is the same as the current here is the same as the current here. It's a loop. So I've got a 100 amp hour battery, and it's going to look at that 100 amp hour battery and how many amps I draw off at 12 volts, because that's what it's monitoring. And so it should give me an accurate view of this battery. Now, the second one, and I labeled it starter because that's what the system calls it's an independent voltage sense. So for calculating state of charge, you use this loop. You have a free voltage that you can use. They call it starter in the tool. So you put it across here, so you have a voltage across both batteries. So you can monitor the voltage of the voltage bank across. And you can do full state of charge on this one. And because they're in series and tend to equalize, they really ought to be, state of charge ought to be similar between the two batteries. But that's the logic, is you're going to draw this, you're monitoring half the pack, but this battery will discharge at the same time this battery discharges. They should both be dead at the same time. And so far, with my usage, I'm measuring the monitoring on this one. When I go over here across the pack, I get a voltage that is almost precisely double what I get off of the single battery, which is what it should be.
But I spent most of the season struggling trying to understand why the state of charge reported state of charge was always higher than the batteries based on voltage. And what I discovered was that I needed to unplug my trolling motor, because even though it was turned off, it was drawing power even when it was turned off. And that power was very, very low, but it was below the threshold that the state of charge indicator would measure current. It was below that limit. And so if you left it plugged in and you parked the boat for a month, you'd end up losing 10 or 15% state of charge, maybe 20. But the meter didn't show that. You could only tell by looking at the voltage. So in any case, right now, I've run it through the end of the season. I've got to double check. I think it's probably been 6 or 8 weeks since I did the last charge on it. The current state of charge on the meter is 42%, and the voltage is, the voltage is 13.14, which actually, if you went at a state of charge chart, actually looks a little higher than 42%, but it's in the ballpark. And I'll say is state of charge by voltage is not always accurate either. It depends on how long the battery's been resting and what you've been doing to it, and so forth. In any case, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go charge it up, and I'm going to see how long it takes to charge and what the voltage curves look like, and try to get an idea how much current goes back in it. And let's see how the recharge works now that I think I've got it dialed in. So there in my battery compartment, there is the meter itself, and that's the monitor that's doing the measurements. If I turn around, there's my charger. Here are my 2 batteries, and the shunt is mounted up on the front there, on the front panel next to the circuit breaker. So these are Battleborn BB10012. They're 100 amp hour. And then I have a voltmeter connected to this front battery. It's an old Radio Shack meter that does recording. It's reading the voltage, and it puts it out through a cable to an RS-232, which I have converted to USB that goes into my laptop here. And so you can see it right there. And the voltmeter is off by about 0.07 volts, 0.06 to 0.07. So it reads just a touch low, but I know how to correct for that in the end. So that's the software that's set up. We'll, when I get this set up, we're going to go start running, and then I'll also try to get some data points using that 712 has Bluetooth, and so I have the Bluetooth app on my phone that is synced into that, so I can watch the curve as we go. And so right now you can see it says 42%, 13.14. There's no current at the moment. It says I've used 56 amp hours by its measurements. The one that's called starter battery, 26.28, is the entire pack. So it should be 13.14 times 2. That works really well. Being the end of the season, normally I wouldn't necessarily recharge those batteries. Oftentimes I would just leave those batteries sit in their current state. But being that they're down 60%, they're down to 42. I am curious how accurate this was, and I don't want to wait till spring to find out. And there is some parasitic from the monitor over the course of the winter. It's less than less than an amp hour, I think, per month. Seems like it's about 0.6 or 0.7 per month. So right now, it won't hurt to take them to the top. Personally, I like to store my batteries around 50% or so, 50, 60, 70, somewhere in there is fine. They don't have to be at the top, but I will charge them, I'll take them to the top, I'll let them equalize, and then we'll let them relax for the winter, and they should be good for the storage season. Here goes, we're going to plug in the charger. The charger's getting cranked up here. It's gone through its self-tests, and now it's starting to put some voltage on the system. Alright, and I have the starter battery, the 12 volt, disconnected. So we're running 9 amps, 9 to 9.5 in both of them. Don't know how long that'll stay, but probably for a while. I'm back. It's the charging process is just finishing. I've let this run overnight. I started it last evening and it's first thing in the morning. It's been about a 12-hour process. So as I'm finishing charging, I wanted to make sure we got up in the absorption range, which is over 14.2, and Battleborn wants you to run over 14.2 for about 20 minutes or 20 or 30 minutes. And I'm well past that now. I'm about 45. And since I'm not running a lithium charger, this one's supposed to cut off at 14.6, but I see it's over by about a tenth. It's running about 14.7, so I'm going to shut it off and let it decay and look at my results. So as I wrap up this charging experiment, I've been letting the batteries relax. So they went up to about 14.7, and then I turned off the charger, so they've just been naturally returning to a resting state. And I wanted to see when they got close to 13.6, which is defined as the resting state. I'm going to cut it off right now. They're at about 13.7, and let me show you and it's again a little this display will read about 07 low, so it's about 13.7, and it's taken a little over 24-25 hours to decay to that level, and I imagine in a few more hours it'll hit 13.6 and it'll stabilize out there, and it can just relax and hold for the winter until next spring. The official display here says 13.7, 27.52 as a total. So the two batteries at this moment aren't exactly equal. 13 and so it would be 27.4 if they were exactly equal. So one battery is just a little higher than the other. Nothing, I guess, that says that they have to relax at the same rate.
Okay, just to finish up, here's the data from charging back up, so you can see how this monitor works, and I think I've got it pretty close now. So if you look at this chart, you can see the battery voltage is the red, and it's over here on the left axis. And so you can see we started down here at 13.13 or 4-ish, and started the charging, and so it worked its way on up, came all the way up here to the top, turned off the charger, and then this is no current. This is just the batteries decaying off. The monitor itself said, hey, when I get to here, I'm at 100% state of charge, fully charged. And interestingly enough, the voltage in the batteries leveled off very quickly there, which suggests that that was the right point. So the charging current here is on the right-hand axis in amps, and you can see it started at 0 amps and it came up here to a little over 9, and then worked its way down and stair-step down. And again, once it got to 100, little past 100%, it starts dropping off. Now, these batteries sat, and the monitor draws a little bit of current when the batteries sit. And I went and figured that out, and it's about 2 amp hours. And if you're charging here in this range, it's this increment past where it's at 100%, where it's still charging and the charge current hasn't dropped off yet, is probably roughly what it took to pick up the difference of I'll call it the resting current that the monitor draws before it started dropping off. The way this monitor works is there's a threshold. You can program it. And I believe the number I've got in there right now is 1/10 of an amp. So if you have a very, very, very low current, the monitor won't record that as usage. And, that's kind of to prevent, having random noise or, a noisy signal or something, causing the meter to monitor, to measure something that isn't really there. So if you have something that's down in the milliamp range that's really below what the monitor is capable of measuring, you can get a little bit of error. And these batteries sat for, I think I figured 77 days. Sat. There were 77 days from the time I charged it the last time till the time I charged it this time, which means there were 77 days worth of about, I think it's 0.8 of a milliamp drain from the monitor itself. Once you get past this point, you'll see the charge current drops off. You see the curve start, the voltage go up very quickly here. And when it gets to about 14.2, this point, that's where the cells are starting to equalize each other. It's in its absorption phase, and it comes up here, and then I manually turn the charger off here and let it relax. This 57 amp hours and this 65, an amp hour is an amp of current put into the battery or drawn from the battery for an hour. So what I did was I went back here and calculated actually in amp minutes. In other words, you've got 9 minutes, or I'm sorry, 9 amps for, almost 60 minutes, just for in principle, right? That would be 9 amps for 60 minutes, or 9 amp hours, because 60 minutes is an hour. And so you can come through here and you can parse this every minute, pick up the current for every minute in each one of these stair steps and add it all up, and you get 57. And the monitor said that I should have had 55 or 56. So, my addition from reading the curves here matched. I wanted to see if the 100% SOC calculation matched doing it by manual methods, and it did match the manual method. And so this is what the meter said it should have taken to get a full charge. I also went through and added these up, and it turns out to be about another 8 amp hours. But it doesn't go past 100. So when it gets here, it says it's 100%. This will relax, and it won't show any usage until we turn on the motors and start making things go. Now, my next curve, this is expanded. This is a screenshot off my phone. And this is the actual curve that was taken from the BMV-712 monitor and how it showed the whole charging. Finally, this one is showing you that from here we went 25 hours, and this is the decay curve of the current as the batteries come back to rest. And just for reference once more, this is the state of charge curve for a Battleborn 100 amp hour 12 volt battery. And we started down here at about 45 to 42%, just a little above 13.1. And we charged and worked our way back up this curve to get back to a full 100% charge. So I'm pretty happy with this monitor. It's working well. I think it's doing what it's supposed to do. And I am now fairly confident that if I go out on the water and I watch this monitor and um, watch it deplete, that I won't get stuck out on the water, and that I'll know when it's time to charge the battery. Go back to my last curve here. Um, this curve is fairly flat out here, and then it drops off very, very quickly when you get down below 13 volts or so. So, you start out up here and you're doing really well, and you're really doing really well. When you get below 40%, starts to get steep. When you get below 30, things are starting to go away. And, here I'm at, still says I'm at 15%, but you can see how fast the voltage is dropping. And if you're out trolling on the water and you want to make sure you got a little bit of margin, this way, if I started to get down to about 15%, I know I'm just about done. And the voltage is falling off very quickly. And at some point soon, the trolling motors won't run. So anyway, that's how the BMV-712 works now that I've had it through a full season. And as I said, I'm pretty happy with it. We'll see how it works next year. But I think I got it dialed in pretty well, and we'll keep going.